the event sponsors for their opening remarks. It's time right now to welcome back Christophe Viarnaud. He will talk about the state of tech in Central Africa. Please welcome Christophe Viarnaud.
Nous avons eu un petit changement de programme, donc je remplace un de nos speakers qui a été bloqué dû à la situation avec les vols. Mais c'est pas plus mal parce qu'on s'était dit que ça serait bien de vous donner un peu de contexte. Hein. Pourquoi on est là? We are here to generate opportunities. We are outcome driven. I think many speakers said this is blah blah if it doesn't produce results, social, economic, jobs, and for that we need investment. So I'm going to give you a bit of a overview of what's going on in Africa, and maybe then zoom in the region and specifically on DRC, just to set the cursor on where do we start, what has happened elsewhere, and what we need to do to go to the next level. You can find on the AfricArena website a really valuable resource. We've been doing this research report for the last 6 years. It's called State of Tech in Africa. It's a flagship resource in the ecosystem. It's free to access. You can download it from our website, wire.africarena.com, on the mobile app that Dan has mentioned. It's 70 or 80 pages. It's very rich, and it's been going on for many years, so you can see the whole history there. You can also see the same thing interactively with lots of analytics and data on the Wired application. So maybe zoom back on what's going on at the moment on the ecosystem. As I mentioned in the introduction, difficult last 2-3 years globally. We call it the VC winter. What it means is that we had a peak globally in 2021, 2022. And it was the same for Africa. Africa has kind of a 6-month lag behind the global VC market. But after peaking at over $5 billion in 2025, equity plus debt, we had a bit of a drop, as you can see here, where we went down to 3.4, stagnated at 3.2. The good news is the ecosystem is on the way up again, hitting over $4 billion last year. Now remember, that's $4 billion across 54 countries, 54 markets, and a population of over 1.3 billion people. Do you have any idea of how much it compared to the global market? Does anyone know how much is the African VC globally? 15%, 10%, 3%, 12%, 5%, 20%. Yeah, it feels like it should be that, right? Well, no, it's 0.6%. Wow. Yeah. And remember what I said, 10 years ago, it was 300 million. So needless to say, we are way, way, way behind the rest of the world in terms of ecosystem. If you compare Africa to some flagship cities around the world or other countries, look at this. Africa as a whole, I'm talking here equity, because the number I gave you earlier include debt. We are smaller than the city of Toronto in Canada. Okay? We are very close to South Korea. I mean, a big ecosystem, right? But it's just one country. And we are smaller than India. One country attracts more VC funding than a whole continent with a similar population, right? So just to give you an idea in terms of other emerging markets and other big cities, look at Sweden, almost as big as that. I'm not talking about France, which is over 10 billion, or the US, which is over 200 billion. So a lot of work still needs to be done. And that's why we work relentlessly at AfricArena and as an ecosystem to improve that. Now, if you zoom in on what's going on in Africa, we've got the big four. Now, these are 4 countries which consistently, over the last 10 years and plus, have gathered over 80% of the funding. 4 countries, 80%. And these countries are South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, and Kenya. And the order can change. At the beginning, South Africa was leading, then Nigeria overtook, then Kenya overtook. 1 year, Egypt came on top. But more or less, this is always the same order. And then you have a second tier of country, which raise a few tens or sometimes over $100 million. And then you have a lot of countries who have a very small amount of capital allocated. You can see here in the color code, this is credit to the Big Deal, which is also a great resource that you can use. I encourage you to look at it to have the detail of all of that. You can see the Central Africa map is the area where the least amount of capital is going. The blue elements are where you have some interesting hub. Just for the record, we have worked many years in 2 countries where we had a huge impact. Tunisia, when we started in Tunisia, it was $2 million annually, 2018. Today, they've raised over $100 million, and they had the largest exit of the continent with AI startup InstaDeep. We did something similar on the call of the government in Senegal. Senegal was over number 30 on the ranking. And in 2023, after 3 AfricArena summits, it had 1 unicorn. Okay, not thanks to us. But the Senegal was number 5 in the list of countries. So these things matters, these gatherings, the fact of working together. It takes a village, it takes a community to generate these results. So that's why we're here. We want to be back next year and show that DRC has leapfrogged these rankings. And it will take work with the great work of Silicon enabling this startup ecosystem, the government efforts to create a startup nation, and all the entrepreneurs that are going to work relentlessly to build, scale, and raise capital. But without the funders that are coming to support them, they won't go very far. So it's all about execution. So we're in a context where equity is on the rise again. There's also a very fast rising class that you need to understand is debt. There's more and more venture debt. That means that before, 10 years ago, you couldn't find venture debt. Of course, the bank wouldn't give you a penny, but there was no specialized entities enabling founders to finance their assets if they were in mobility or energy. And what they were doing is they were raising equity to fund working capital, which is the worst way to raise money. VC money is expensive money you can find. So this is really good news because there's things you have appetite for people who fund on a venture debt model, not just equity, which ultimately dilutes the founders left. What is also important to know is that it's still very concentrated. Now, this is also a consistent trend, but you see that, and this is the example of 2024, half the funding goes to 10 startups. Some of them unicorns like MoneyPoint or Time Bank. So VCs, in terms of VC allocation, the amount of capital is really going to the ones that are scaling fast, that are become unicorn or on their way to be there. And you can see some of these great companies on that graph. And 50% of the transactions only represent barely 3% of the capital. But these are crucial transactions. That's your first round. That's your first 10, 20, 50, $100 that's going to enable the founder to be on its way there, okay? So what we need here, we don't need to start thinking of building a unicorn tomorrow morning. To get there, we need to get more angels, early stage investors to come to DRC and back the founders that you'll see pitching on stage in a few minutes. That's what we need. We're very happy to have with us of the best early stage investors, Lina from Launch Africa, Tamim from Seed Stars Ventures. These guys have been backing ventures early stage for many years. They're highly experienced, and they're not coming here just for tourism. They're coming here to do deals. You got to convince them. So if we zoom in on what's going on in DR now, let's check it out. This is what's happening, in terms of evolution. So you can see something striking. It's fluctuating quite a bit, and you don't really see a trend that it's increasing dramatically. There's been a few exceptions with some interesting deals that were made. Some, by the way, between two ecosystems like South Africa and DRC. But these are the top deals that were made in this country. In total, since we've been tracking it, which is like 10 years ago, there's been $113 million invested in 27 deals. You can see here the list of the deals. This is the AfricArena Wired platform. We're the only one to have this very interactive analytics. You can get any country, any year, any sector, and pivot it. And so what that shows is that some companies are able to raise big tickets. So the market is there, the potential is there. But it's really only a few companies that have been able to execute on that. And often what we found is some of these founders, they're actually in Johannesburg, in Nairobi, they've learned to build bridges with other ecosystems to quickly expand their market, but also to find investors where they are. So what we're trying to do here now is to, number one, bring investors here on early stage so that you can see a dramatic growth of the number consistently, not just every other year or every 3 years. You can see, right, 1.3 million 2022, peaked at 2023, which is one of the top years we had at 62 million, very much quiet 2 years, right? So it's about consistency. And for that, we need, and I'm very happy to hear what the government had to say, stability in the market, the regulation, the government, the economy. And I think anything the government is doing to provide that is going to be gold for investors. So when we worked in Tunisia or Senegal, one of the first things we worked with the government was support the effort with Startup Act. Because we've been working through a community called Digital Collective Africa, we have a whole group of people working across different countries to enable a more modern operating system for government to deal with startups. And that's like a lot of measures to tax break on early stage investment, enabling register company quickly, enabling to ensure an investor, if he invests money in the country, will be able to take it back easily without too much red tape or taking years to get their returns. That's super important. And some ecosystem work, like labelization of startup, building a place like this. This is a number of things that we need. Then you have deal flow. Very important, you put the deal flow visible. So an event like this, startup pitching, you're online, thousands of people can see you live on replay. That's golden. We have seen people sitting in Tokyo or San Francisco, seeing a startup at AfricArena, reaching out to them and even investing in them without even being present at the event. So transparency and quality of deal flow, it's very important because it shows the quality of the ecosystem, that is an investable pipeline, that investors, they can come here and know for sure there's some good startup to meet and invest in. So that's our job, to make it visible alongside with our partners. So deal flow, quality and visibility. Of course, your infrastructure, having cost-effective, reliable internet, making sure that payments work, that moving money around is important, and that you have good energy infrastructure. I mean, not much that we can do about this, but clearly this is the local economy and government. And then, an investor, they need to know they're going to be exiting. A founder needs to know they're going to make returns to create the next startups, right? So we need to produce success stories. And to produce success stories here, where at the moment we have not seen a lot of exits, acquisition, M&A operations yet, is going to be, again, connecting that deal flow of exitable startups to the people that can do that, larger investors that do secondaries, or corporates that can buy startups. Most of the exits on the continent have all been, or nearly all been, through corporates. Of course, there's no local stock exchange for startups. That's no different from other countries. And producing success stories is what we're going to need to start building together, even if it's small exits at the beginning, so that the investors can see that there's a good wheel of returns being put in place. So, these are some of the elements we've seen in other ecosystems. We're going to be discussing it over the next few panels. I think we have a few panels on this. And I'm very happy that we have some very high quality speakers. So, we need to also work together on positioning DRC. I can tell you, being in, first of all, traveling across the continent and the world all the time, talking about Africa, DRC is not well known. Okay, it's that big country in Central Africa. People don't even know the numbers. The population, the youth of the population, the economic potential. So to do that, project that internationally, very important, so that it becomes a super high potential, high new frontier market, rather than a high risk, highly asymmetric market, which is maybe the perception out there. So it's going to take some time, and I'm very glad that you joined us today. We have a full room and some people outside, and we're going to move to our next discussion, which is going to be right on point. East Kinshasa, the soft landing hub of Central Africa. Over to you. Thank you, guys.